Using the power of the internet, you can now watch GLC on any TV in the US, Canada, the UK, and Ireland with Roku. Basically, a box that connects to your television. Roku acts as a middleman between your internet connection and your television. So if you have internet service at your home, chances are high that you can watch all of the great GLC programming. And best of all, it's highly affordable too, with only a one-time fee ranging from $50 to $100. Log on to our website, www.glc.us.com, for details on how you can watch GLC via Roku.
Well, welcome to Monday's update. And Al and Tommy just came back from Amarillo.
We did.
It was something else.
They did. We sent them up there for a secret thing. Now, it was secret to them what was going on. Yeah. Under the pretense that it was all a CFOIC with Sandra Barris. She actually did a Shabbat teaching in conjunction with Mike Isley's Texans for Israel, I believe. Ari Abramowitz came in from Israel to be part of that, and then he came down with Mom and Dad.
Yeah. We had a wonderful time.
To be recorded today. But what happened last night?
We got to see a lot of our partners for one thing, but they honored Al and I.
That was the secret part.
Grandly. I tell you what, it was very touching, very
yes, it was
humbling, and I wish I'd have brought it in. Mike presented us with a beautiful shofar.
Well, maybe we can show it to him on Wednesday because I sent the camera crew.
Yeah.
I knew it was all going to happen, so you send the camera crew, right? Mom and Dad didn't know it was going to happen.
That'd be better anyhow.
And so they recorded quite a bit of what happened, part of the Shabbat stuff, Ari's speech thing that he gave.
And it was wonderful.
And then the presentation to you guys. So you never know. You might even get to see it in toto, but who knows? So anyway, we'll see about that.
Depends how Corey can edit it.
You never know about those guys, right? Okay, so my big reminder to everybody, tomorrow is a huge day.
Amen.
It's critical day.
Midterm elections. Get out and vote.
Yes.
If I can take the time to go vote tomorrow, so can you. Trust me. Right?
You're going to do it.
I am going to do it. I'm not going to miss voting tomorrow. It is critical this time.
It is absolutely
that people get out and vote. Tonight on Line of the Southwest, we'll have a repeat with William Levy out of South Sudan. And then tomorrow night, as your reward, only for voting, you'll get to see the interview that I got to do Friday with Yohanan Salamanca. And then the second hour with his wife, Rocio. But you have to vote. Otherwise, on the honor system, you cannot tune in and watch.
That's right.
Okay? There you go.
Your screen will go black. That's right. Okay, Tommy, you don't have a devotion. Would you read my letter for me, please?
Sure. I'll read your letter. It says, Dear Al, Tommy, Amy, and staff, thank you for all the work you do so we can get such great programs. Update News, lots. That's Light of Southwest. Richard Booker, Yohanan Salamanca, Joe McGee, the fastest talking man I ever heard, and Savannah Minor, Shepherd's Heart, all archaeology programs, Jean-Claude, and most all of the rest of them. We watch on Galaxy 19 and Dish, starting on cable in 2002. We got our Roundup 2013 box today. Thank you for sending that. It was a surprise to see what was in it, as I had forgotten. So you see, I didn't lose any sleep over it. May God continue to give you good health and wisdom as you continue doing His work. The check enclosed is for Satellite and Lone Soldiers. And that's from Anonymous in Dimmitt, Texas.
Thank you, Anonymous. You do know who you are. It was a great letter, actually.
It was.
Dimmitt.
Enjoyed it.
Well, we do have some good news today. Okay, well, it's not good news, but news that people need to hear.
Right.
It's hard to find good news. So, anyway. So if we're ready, I think we'll just go ahead and get started on that.
Go.
Except one more thing. I'm sorry if you came out to the bookstore today because Jenny wasn't back today. So actually, I know that there was one gal. I got to meet her today.
Oh, dear.
Her name was Rhonda, and she's from right here.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad she didn't come from New Mexico or
I also
North
got to meet
Texas.
the UPS delivery man.
All right.
So that was nice, you know. Really, it kind of scares me that people may have driven
Come
in
in.
expecting her to be here today.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. Well, first article comes from the Jerusalem Post. Only 16% of Israelis believe that U.S. President Barack Obama's administration is more pro-Israel than pro-Palestinian, according to a Smith Research poll taken Wednesday night exclusively for the Jerusalem Post. The poll of 500 respondents, representing a statistical sample of the adult Israeli Jewish population, was taken following a report in The Atlantic, in which officials close to Obama were quoted sharply criticizing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and calling him a word that we won't use here.
That's right.
On GLC.
That's right. None of them should have used it either. It shouldn't even be in their vocabulary. The report resulted in a major backlash among Israelis and in criticism of Obama across the political spectrum. Throughout Obama's tenure, Smith Research has asked Israelis in 11 Jerusalem Post polls whether the Obama administration is more pro-Israel, more pro-Palestinian, or neutral, which is seen as the bellwether question of whether Israelis believe a U.S. president is on their side.
Well, the new poll found that 53% consider the administration more pro-Palestinian than pro-Israel. 20% called it neutral, and 11% didn't express an opinion. The margin of error of the poll was 4.5% points. By contrast, the last Smith Research poll, which followed Obama's March 2013 visit to Israel, found that 27% considered the Obama administration more pro-Israel, 16% said more pro-Palestinian, 39% neutral, and 18% didn't express an opinion. Well, since then, Obama's administration has gone from an 11% majority calling it more pro-Israel to a majority of 37% deeming it more pro-Palestinian. Add those numbers together and you've got 48%. That's how big the switch has been.
Wow. Well, respondents to the Wednesday poll who identified themselves as religiously observant were significantly more likely to call Obama's administration more pro-Palestinian, 69% to 46%. Only 8% of religious respondents said the administration was more pro-Israel, compared to 20% of secular respondents. In the 11 Smith Research polls that have asked the question, the highest percentage of Israelis calling the Obama administration more pro-Israel was 31% in May 2009. The lowest percentage was in August of the same year at only 4%.
And another article from the Jerusalem Post out of Washington. Over the last 6 years, Democrats have driven policy on Iran and its nuclear program virtually unchallenged. Midterm elections on Tuesday may change that dynamic overnight. Republicans seek a majority in the Senate and full control over the legislature this year, and polls suggest their goal is in sight. Key races in Kentucky, Georgia, Arkansas, Colorado, Iowa, and Alaska are leaning red, according to various polls conducted over the weekend.
Should the GOP succeed this week, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, has vowed to present legislation long opposed by U.S. President Barack Obama. McConnell will challenge the president to use his veto power or, alternatively, invite Republican leadership to sit at their table on matters of foreign policy, particularly concerning ongoing negotiations with Iran. That will be a victory in the eyes of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government, which has angered the White House in its effort to circumvent the president on Iran, lobbying Congress for sanctions legislation, which Obama publicly opposes.
Efforts this year by members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee supported by Netanyahu cabinet members to trigger new sanctions against Iran should negotiations fail, were blocked by current Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, a Democrat from Nevada. The Majority Leader has the authority to set the schedule for debate and voting on the Senate floor, and Reid, as it's known on Capitol Hill, filled the tree with matters that prevented discussion of the proposed measure.
It's expected that chairmanship of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee will likely move to Senator Bob Corker, Republican from Tennessee. Over the summer, Corker surprised his colleagues by attaching language to the U.S.-Israel Strategic Partnership Act that would trigger such hearings, as well as a non-binding resolution vote on any future deal announced with Iran. Senate control will provide Netanyahu with a sharpened tool that he has long sought in Washington, actionable leverage on the president that might change the course of crisis in Iran.
Good.
And this out just before I headed this direction today from the Wall Street Journal, also out of Washington. Iran's government continues to stonewall United Nations weapons inspectors, complicating the Obama administration's effort to forge a nuclear agreement with Tehran by a November 24th deadline, according to U.S. and UN officials. The U.S. and the European Union have said Iran's cooperation with the UN in addressing evidence that Tehran conducted studies in the past on the development of atomic weapons is crucial to reaching a broader accord on the future of the Iranian nuclear program. Yukiya Amano, Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, that's the IAEA, the UN's nuclear watchdog, said Friday there has been almost no progress in resolving the outstanding allegations of weapons development, despite a year of negotiations with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani's government.
The IAEA is seeking access to leading Iranian nuclear scientists who are believed to have been involved in nuclear weapons research. The agency also is demanding access to Iranian research and military sites. Among them is a military base called south of Tehran called Parsin, where the IAEA and the U.S. believe atomic weapons development occurred. Last year, the IAEA and Tehran outlined 12 areas of concern that needed to be addressed before the agency could close its file on Iran, which has been the target of 4 rounds of UN sanctions. Mr. Amano said there had been significant progress in only one of those 12 areas.
Despite Tehran's insistence that its nuclear program is solely for peaceful purposes, Iran has so far denied IAEA investigators access to the scientists or the sites. Although Iran claims that the IAEA's evidence of weapons work is based on fabricated intelligence, Mr. Amano said the evidence is based on broadly credible information. He also said there is a possibility that Iran has continued to conduct nuclear weapons research even during the negotiations with the West.
A number of the U.S.'s closest Middle East allies, particularly Israel and Saudi Arabia, have voiced concerns in recent weeks that the U.S. and the P5+1 have softened their negotiating position with Iran.
U.S. officials have voiced guarded optimism that a deal could be reached by the November deadline. Absent that, they have suggested the diplomatic process could be extended. Prince Turki Al Faisal, a leading member of the Saudi royal family, said his country could also seek to develop the technologies used in building nuclear weapons if Iran was allowed to maintain them as part of a final agreement.
Wow.
Things are getting interesting over there in the Middle East.
And from INN in Jerusalem, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has outraged Israeli leaders by condemning Israel for killing the man who shot Jewish ultra-right-wing Rabbi Yehuda Glick, and then referring to the attempted assassin as a martyr. In the letter, Abbas wrote, "We received with anger the announcement about the despicable crime perpetrated by the gangs of killing and terror in the Israeli occupation army against the son, Matoz Hejazi, who rose to the heavens as a martyr for the defense of the rights of the Palestinian nation and the holy places. Abbas also described the elimination of the assassin, who was a member of the Islamic Jihad, as a barbaric operation on the part of Israel, just one of many crimes against the Palestinian people.
Well, on Sunday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu strongly condemned the Palestinian Authority chairman for that letter. When we are trying to calm the situation, Abu Mazen, that's Abbas, sends condolences over the death of one who tried to perpetrate a reprehensible murder. The time has come for the international community to condemn him for such actions, the Prime Minister said.
The letter was condemned by Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman, who said, "The letter of support indicates more than anything that Abu Mazen is indeed a partner to terror, a partner to terrorists, a partner to murderers. Abu Mazen's despicable letter constitutes open support for terror and encouragement for additional murders," said the foreign minister. Lieberman called upon the international community to denounce Abbas, a man who is leading the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to violent, terrible places.
And Israeli President Reuven Rivlin, who spoke at the Begin Heritage Center on Sunday evening, said, "The fact that the would-be assassin worked here is proof of the price that we pay and will continue to pay for a united Jerusalem, an open city in which we live together. The attempted murder which took place here is yet another serious escalation in the ongoing violence and terror in Jerusalem and marks an attempt to make us fear walking the streets and neighborhoods of the city. Jerusalem is the capital of the state of Israel. We cannot tolerate the terror which exists in the city, and we cannot afford to respond lightly. In order to bring an end to these bloody events in Jerusalem, we must act forcefully, without hesitation, against the perpetrators and the terrorist groups."
Yehuda Glick, who founded and heads Haliba, the Initiative for Jewish Freedom on the Temple Mount, was shot in the chest on Wednesday night outside the Begin Heritage Center in Jerusalem. Minutes before, Yehuda had been speaking at an event hosted for religious figures and members of Knesset, which advocated for Jewish rights on the Temple Mount. According to an eyewitness, a man on a motorcycle who spoke with a thick Arab accent approached Glick as he loaded equipment into the back of his car after the event and asked if he was Yehuda Glick before shooting him in the chest 4 times and speeding off.
Yehuda Glick is an American-born Israeli rabbi and political activist who campaigns for expanding Jewish access to the Temple Mount. He advocates opening the Temple Mount on an equal footing to prayer by Muslims, Jews, Christians, and others. He's been called, quote, a symbol of the struggle for Jewish prayer on the Temple Mount. Yehuda has been described as representing the recent shift in the demand for Jewish prayer to be permitted on the Temple Mount on an equal footing with Muslim prayer, from the fringe to the mainstream of Israeli society.
Haaretz journalist Nir Hassan credits Glick as having put the Israeli left on the defensive by uncovering the absurdity created at the Temple Mount by a status quo that, by permitting Muslim prayer while prohibiting Jewish prayer, discriminates against people because of their religion. Glick has spoken about his vision of a utopian Temple Mount. It would include a house of prayer for all nations, with the Dome of the Rock standing alongside a rebuilt Jewish sacrificial altar.
In a statement published by the Jerusalem Post, the Haliba organization described its mission as bringing together a diverse group of Jewish Israelis, secular, Haredi, traditional, national religious, men and women, who are united in their concern that the inability of Jews to freely ascend the mount to pray, meditate, or give thanks represents a grievous and indefensible civil rights deprivation to Jews all over the world.
Indeed it does.
Yeah, I'd kind of have to agree with that one.
Mm-hmm. I do too. Well, this comes to us from the Times of Israel. A senior Israeli official told the Times of Israel that despite intensified Egyptian efforts to eliminate the smuggling of weapon components from the Sinai Peninsula into the Gaza Strip, Hamas is still producing rockets. The source said that Egyptian counterterrorism activities, including intelligence efforts, which had been a major problem for Cairo, have drastically improved recently. He added that the Egyptians are preventing the smuggling of dual-use materials such as metal pipes and fertilizer that can be used in building rockets into the Sinai and Gaza by tightening controls on the Egyptian border with Sudan and Libya. Nevertheless, Hamas has renewed its rocket production in Gaza, albeit at a slower rate, especially mid-range rockets.
The source also said that while it's evident that at this stage Hamas is being very wary about digging tunnels that go into Israel, Israeli intelligence is aware that Hamas is working hard to rehabilitate its tunnel network, both defensive tunnels inside Gaza and the cross-border attack tunnels, all destroyed by Israel during Operation Protective Edge. An embargo on building materials cannot solve the problem entirely. The official warned that Gaza's Islamist rulers can build tunnels without cement, noting that Hamas has used tunnels in the past without cement and concrete, as it did in the kidnapping of IDF soldier Gilad Shalit in 2006, who was held captive for, more than 5 years.
Last Wednesday, after the Egyptian military ordered residents out to make way for a planned 1,500-meter wide buffer zone along the Rafah border meant to stop militants and smugglers, the army demolished dozens of homes along the Egyptian Gaza Strip border with dynamite and bulldozers. Although the implementation came after militants attacked an Egyptian army checkpoint in the northern Sinai, which left 31 soldiers dead, an Israeli source said that the plan to set up the 8-mile buffer zone had been in the works for at least 3 months.
The corridor will eventually be monitored by surveillance cameras and feature a water-filled trench that will be 40 meters wide, 20 meters deep, and run all along the border to the Mediterranean Sea, officials said. Cairo has received Israel's approval to introduce special forces, attack helicopters, tanks, and armored vehicles into the Sinai. In all, Egypt now has 11 battalions inside that peninsula.
Wow. The majority of the border area's population is found in Rafah, a city that was split into 2 halves, one Palestinian and one Egyptian, after Egypt signed the Camp David Accord with Israel in 1978. Plans to create a buffer zone along the Gaza border first began after the Palestinian militant group Hamas seized the territory in 2007. Hamas has been using tunnels as a means to escape an Israeli-Egyptian blockade imposed on Gaza.
Over the past decade, the northern region of the Sinai Peninsula has become a hub for Islamic extremists. Although insurgency has spiked since the ouster of Islamist President Mohamed Morsi in July 2013, the violence has spread to other parts of Egypt, with militants targeting police in Cairo and the Nile Delta. According to Egyptian estimates, there are still several thousand jihadists in the Sinai. The Egyptians and Israelis have intelligence that terror operatives from Ansar Beit al-Maqdis, the organization responsible for a number of serious attacks against the Egyptian army, are being helped by known Hamas operatives. In addition, there is a permanent presence of Ansar al-Maqdis terrorists who are helping Sinai jihadists from within the Gaza Strip, providing them with weapons and training.
Oh my.
I think it's pretty cool that they're building a buffer zone, or they've built it by now probably.
It is. Well, this article also comes from Sheva. A senior security source said on Sunday afternoon, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon sent sharp messages to Hamas following the firing of a rocket Friday night at the Eshkol region. The source added that Hamas had sent a message to Jerusalem that 5 suspects had been arrested. In response to the rocket attack, Israel announced on Saturday night that the Karim Shalom and Erez crossings into Gaza will be closed on Sunday. The crossings will only be opened for passage of goods and people in humanitarian cases, according to the announcement.
A Hamas official called the closing of the passages a childish and irresponsible act and collective punishment on the Gaza Strip, which violates all international laws, including the terms of the ceasefire agreement. Friday's incident marks the second time since the end of last summer's Operation Protective Edge that Gaza terrorists have attempted rocket fire toward Israel. Last month, a mortar attack was launched by Gazan terrorists against southern Israel. Hamas denied responsibility for the attack and later announced it had arrested the perpetrators. The two sides were scheduled to resume Egyptian-mediated talks for a permanent ceasefire. However, Egypt announced last week that the talks would be postponed until mid-November. So there you go.
We have an article about Peru, and this comes from what is that?
I-24.
I-24 News. Peruvian authorities have foiled a terrorist attack against Jews and Israelis in the country of Peru, Israel Channel 2 reported Thursday night. According to the report, a Hezbollah member, Lebanese Mohammed Zuhair al-Madar, 28, was allegedly planning to execute a major attack against Israeli and Jewish targets. The suspect, who belonged to Hezbollah's Foreign Terror Operations Branch, was arrested after collecting intelligence on Jewish and Israeli targets in Peru. During a search of his apartment, police discovered explosives and a weapon. He was reportedly planning to attack locations popular among Israeli backpackers, an Israeli embassy in Lima, and several institutions of the local Jewish community. Authorities said the suspect was also in charge of a terrorist cell operating in Peru. Amadar has denied any connection to Hezbollah and said he was on his way to the U.S. to meet his Peruvian-American wife. The Israeli Foreign Ministry has refused to comment on the report, according to Ynet News.
Just a little food for thought for everybody. When Yohanan was here last week, and he was talking about the situation in Mexico where he is, where it in the state of Puebla, it used to be pretty safe. Is that the state of Puebla where he lives?
I believe it is.
Fairly safe. It's not safe there anymore because of it's all reached down there. But then I was asking him later on, well, what's the situation in Peru? Because he had been talking also about Peru. He says it's actually worse. It's less safe than Mexico, if you can imagine.
Yeah. I can.
Can I ask a question?
You may certainly ask anything you like.
How is our roundup coming?
Our roundup is coming really, really good.
Have we met our goals?
No.
So that means...
Well, it's coming along, though. I'm just hoping that we don't have to go live anymore. Everybody's so worn out.
I know.
So anyway, I'm missing Monica a lot. You know, one thing I have to say is I'm really enjoying processing the incoming mail because I get to see what the people are.
Who's there?
No, I get to see what the people are saying.
Yeah,
Since I'm always checking that stuff off in the accounting realm of my duties. I see the names most of the time, so I'm seeing new names, but no, I get to see the nice things that they're saying, and there were quite a few really nice messages today, so thank you for that. I really appreciated that.
We do appreciate that.
So it's always encouraging to get nice mail. We did get one $3,000 check today.
Praise God.
In response to that, so I can't remember who it's from, though. I'll tell you tomorrow, maybe. No, I won't.
Well, it's the critical of really, it's a very critical roundup, and I must stress that.
Yeah, it's the make or break GLC roundup is basically what it is. So it's not only meeting our operating expenses, but that $94,000 we need to make that IP conversion so that we can start saving a ton of money on satellite bills. You know?
And be prepared.
Without losing any coverage at all.
Right.
Everybody would still be able to see us.
And it might increase some, too.
Yes, it
Take
might.
it from an old engineer.
Well, we love you. We'll see you again Wednesday.
Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.